Let me introduce Dr. Ben Ingman. Take it away, Ben.
Thank you for the introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm going to share. Give me just a second to do this. Sorry for the madness for a moment.
And thanks everybody for being here. It's really good to see you all on a Friday morning. Really makes my week, I know.
Yeah, I would say the same. I mean, it's this is super hard to be able to commit time to anything right now. So I think all of you being able to continue to show up for this and remain connected with this group has been, it means a lot. I know it means a lot for our team, especially as the pandemic by and large worsens and things only get harder. Seeing people continue to show up and that this is still important to folks it means a lot to me, means a lot to everybody on our team. So thanks for coming. Thanks for sharing your pets. Thanks for the heart rocks. So far so good. Only downhill from here. Here comes a presentation. I wanted to blow everybody's mind by using a gradient because I don't use gradients. So you'll note the gradient font here in the colors. Okay. Here is a presentation, Making It Happen, what helps and hinders the implementation of health and wellness practices in rural schools. So the findings I'm going to share, many of you contributed to, many on our team, and wellness coordinators across San Luis Valley and southeastern Colorado. So although I'm the one talking, these are things that we've learned together and in partnership together. So I hope we all have a sense of ownership over these, and I hope we all see our own perspectives in some way, shape, or form reflected in what I'm going to share. So in the presentation, I'll touch briefly on the background so we can dive straight into the findings and the meat, so we can have a little time for the application of what these ideas mean for us in our working in our school districts. Can everybody see my screen before I move on? Yep. Okay, good. Great. Okay, so background real quick. This is going to be the shortest background in a study of all time. There's a lot of literature out there on barriers and facilitators. If you want to learn about it, please reach out to us. We're happy to share it, but I'm going to skip it for the purposes of this presentation. We interviewed wellness coordinators across San Luis Valley and southeastern Colorado, as you know, on their efforts to implement health and wellness practices in their school. Our questions were focused around the barriers that they're encountering and districts are encountering, and the facilitators. So what's helping to get things implemented and what's hindering it, what's making it harder. Those interviews were transcribed and analyzed by our team. And then we had, I had my idea what our findings would look like. I thought we would have a section on barriers and a section on facilitators, things that make it hard, things that make it easy. But as it turned out, really those barriers and facilitators were operating on the same plane. Oftentimes it was the presence or absence of a common theme that was a barrier or a facilitator. So we have just one set of findings for you to talk with you today about, which are, forthcoming in a moment here. We're sharing these for two reasons. One is to kind of round things out with, you participated in a study and now you're getting to be able to see the findings. But two, because these findings, I think, are going to help us be able to do our work better in seeing what themes were bubbling up across school districts. We can better know and better be able to act on what helps and what hinders implementation. So I think these can help us better do our work. With that, here we are. I don't know if you all remember, there was I'm just so bummed about this COVID environment. Remember what I was presenting to a group of wellness coordinators. I was able to run across the stage and do something like, there was like a big graphic that moved and it was awesome and we were all together. So I want to say I missed that, but I would be doing something like that if we were together, but instead I'm going to advance the slide. All right, slide advanced. Here come the key considerations for implementing health and wellness initiatives in rural schools. I'm going to share 6 of these. As you're hearing these qualities, I hope you can be thinking about your own school and the changes that you're trying to make. Really, the cool thing about qualitative research is that hearing the findings from studies that relate to the context we're working in can help us, look at a familiar setting with a fresh perspective. It's a new lens that we can be applying to a familiar line of work. So that's, as I'm going through these, that's what I want you to be thinking about your own setting and how this applies, how this might help you better do your work. One other disclaimer is that there's 6 of them, they're numbered. There's no significance to the numbers. It's just to kind of help track them. Here we go. First one, funding and staffing. This one's not very surprising, but money is important. So it was named as a prominent facilitator by many wellness coordinators. It wasn't just that there was money, but the importance of flexibility in using those funds to get things implemented. Also important was support with managing the grant funds. Glad Shirley Berg is here. And help in seeking new funds outside of what was already there. To the other side, when there wasn't enough funding, that was also seen as a barrier. So, and it wasn't not just the absence of funding, but also kind of misaligned funding, or when there was a delay in getting the funds to the school district, or even in some cases when there wasn't an eye on long-term funding. We had money now, but we don't have money down the road. That can operate as a barrier in the present. So lots of considerations around the financial side of things. And high crossover with funding is the staffing concerns. So usually inability to staff a position is a financial one, though not always. And the ability to staff something was seen as a facilitator when there was an ability to staff it, and when there wasn't, that was a major, another major barrier, major consideration in implementation. So that's the first. Moving on, second one. Wellness coordinators named useful and practical materials and processes as an important consideration in implementation. So having tools that were ready for application, the background of a deliberate planning process, which you're all familiar with, and adaptable resources, all helpful things that promote implementation. Many attributed the AIM process as a central feature of this. Some of the things that came up were guidelines for recruiting a diverse task force, the AIM meetings themselves, the comprehensive health and wellness plan template, action planning resources, and a timeline for implementation. All those things are noted as prominent facilitators in implementation. This, for me and for others on our team, this was a surprise. I didn't expect to see the process through which a plan was generated to be a key factor in helping with implementation, and that's really cool. So I was really excited about that from where I sat, and it there's lessons learned there for all of us about to be able to continue to lean on the strength of that process in implementation. Also importantly, wellness coordinators noted that the adaptability or flexibility of materials and processes, both those that we've used in partnership and other ones, has been an important consideration in implementation. When things are adaptable to our environment, they can help with implementation. Third, collaboration within and beyond the school was identified as another key facilitator to implementation. This happened a lot of ways. So first, engaging community and family perspectives in the planning process encouraged ongoing partnerships for implementation. So by bringing them in at the beginning, some had a new window into collaboration through bringing them in. Collaborating with community partners like local agencies and individuals in the community was also identified as a facilitator. So again, it seems that that planning process opened the door in many cases to jumpstarting some of these collaborations for task forces and for those working on health and wellness. Also, the technical assistance during implementation, as largely provided by Crush, was seen as a key facilitator, which makes us feel warm. Glad that that's not being identified as a barrier, at least. But so that was another major facilitator. Fourth, the actions and attributes of those tasked with implementing practices is another key consideration. And really, this is, thinking about wellness coordinators, this is thinking about you. So the strategic actions of implementers were seen as promoting implementation. For example, effective communication or strategically generating enthusiasm and building momentum where momentum was lacking. Things like that, some of those strategic actions that wellness coordinators just know to do on their own. Those were identified as kind of critical facilitating factors. more than those actions, that also this is also really a theme about the kind of the ineffable qualities of people doing the work. And there was a lot of these attributes that were named really oftentimes in the context of overcoming barriers when barriers came up. Things like enthusiasm, excitement, creativity, commitment, alignment of personal values with what the work was, internal drive, and motivation. So it's really the heart that wellness coordinators are bringing and other key implementers are bringing that can help us overcome barriers when they're arising. I mean, that's really cool and really something I'm proud of the wellness coordinators for that, and I hope it's something we can kind of hold on to as we move forward through continuing hard times with implementation. On the other side, the absence of these attributes in people who were importantly positioned in school systems was identified as a barrier to implementation. So if someone lacked motivation or drive, or this work didn't align with their values, or they aren't excited about it, that's a huge barrier if they're positioned as a key implementer. So this stresses the importance of who's involved, who are the implementers in our schools. We're doing great. We're moving on to 5. Buy-in and openness to change was also noted as both a facilitator and a barrier to implementation. This was within the school and beyond into the school community. So the buy-in of different roles was really talked about differently across these different roles. One that really stands out is the school administration or superintendents, probably most importantly. That superintendent was often singled out as on both ends of the spectrum, really. We found that the superintendent was described as playing really a foundational role in creating a school environment that was conducive to implementation and also just openness to change. If a superintendent is not cool with change, it's going to be really hard to make any changes around health and wellness. Whereas, if they are open and they're eager to make their school improve their school environment and make it a healthier place for students, then we can. And so again, both ends of the spectrum there. Low buy-in, on the other hand, was a barrier to implementation. And then also the buy-in and openness to change amongst families and community, and then teachers and staff. When it was present, when buy-in was present, when openness to change was present, a facilitator, absence, or even active a lack of openness to change was a barrier. Okay, 6th and final factor to implementation in the rural school is the rural school community context and the community itself. So the rural school setting was noted as a barrier to implementation in some cases as it pertains to health and wellness initiatives because school districts often have competing priorities. As you all know, there are many challenges to working in a rural school. Some of the things that came up in the context of what made it hard to implement changes were a lack of resources was named, the fact that they're having to serve high need populations oftentimes with fewer personnel who are tasked with broader responsibilities. I'm telling you what you already know, that the extent to which rural schools can be stretched thin can be a barrier to implementation. But the cool thing about this is the rural context is also a huge facilitator and a huge facilitating factor in implementation. Because as you all know, there's many virtues to rural schools, and these virtues can help with implementation. Wellness coordinators named the fact that there's close-knit communities, the interconnectedness of people and roles, and the vested interests of implementers. The people doing the work, are committed to their schools, and so that can be a strength. And so leaning on that and honoring the rural school context really is the way to frame this as a facilitating factor, knowing the strengths and challenges of the rural school context in implementation. Okay, so that's it. Those are the 6. Those are the big key considerations that came out of this study. These are the common important things that emerged through interviews with wellness coordinators working in the San Luis Valley and southeastern Colorado, based on the experience, trying to make things happen. It's exciting because, to me at least, because there's not a lot of research out there, particularly in the rural school context. And it's really exciting for all of us because these findings came from our partnership together. So there's a very good reason to believe that they directly apply and provide a very useful lens for doing the work of implementation moving forward. A couple key notes on this, and what I think are kind of interesting connections. These considerations do not operate in isolation. Really, they overlap in the interview excerpts themselves, but also these features, are part of a shared system. It's easy to see them relating to one another. I've highlighted just an example. We can think about how strong the strong process of AIM or strong materials of a comprehensive health and wellness plan can lead to funding. We've seen that in many cases when a CHWP has been used as a grant application. Funding can also help with buy-in. If you have a superintendent who doesn't want to prioritize health and wellness, and then you're able to say, I'm able to get funds for us to work on health and wellness, they're much more likely to be bought into that process. And that buy-in can also be leveraged to build new partnerships. So the big point here being, this is just kind of a random connection. There's many connections amongst these different items. And what's interesting about, another thing that I think is interesting about this is that, we can be thinking about these different areas and how they might be related, how we might leverage one area to improve another, and just honoring the fact that these are really overlapping and interrelated features of a common environment. Okay, so I wanted to bring back up the big six here. A couple disclaimers. Knowing about these 6 considerations is not going to fix any of our problems or issues, unfortunately. They don't account for everything that needs to be done as well. You'll remember we had implementation guidelines and an awesome document that Carla created a while back. I think that offers a nice complement to these considerations. Also, this interview was conducted fall 2019, before COVID-19. So that's important context, because if I were to ask these same questions right now with all of you, I would guess that you'd have different answers around what the key barriers and facilitators to change are. So this is under normal consideration. So that's another big caveat with this. But that being said, I think there's a tremendous upshot. I've already kind of alluded to some of this, but these qualities do provide a useful lens to think about implementation. They can help us better understand the systems that we're a part of. And that's what I'm really excited about moving forward, is how these can help us think about the problems we might be encountering and the changes that we're trying to make. I could see 2 real ways of applying this. One is at the school setting, or the district setting. Where am I strong across the district? Do I have strong funding and staffing across my school district? Do I have strong buy-in and openness for change across my school district, et cetera? Another way to think about it is thinking about particular practices where I might be struggling, and where might be the linchpin that's lost here in preventing me from getting that item implemented. Thinking through these things: do I have funding and staffing for this change? Do I have the practical materials and processes I need to implement this change? Do I have collaborative partnerships to implement this change? So you can apply all these to the granular level and also the grand level to help us think again about implementing these changes in schools, and also that can jumpstart conversation at minimum as an issue to bring up with your TA provider, and something that we can be working on together to help solve issues that we might identify.
For more information about Project ECHO and upcoming ECHOs with the University of Denver, please visit mortgage.du.edu/ECHO or follow us on Twitter at ECHO_DU_MCE. Thanks for watching.